Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Pink Floyd Completion Project. Today we are looking at Animals from 1977. And as you can see, I do not have notes because I've listened to this album not nearly as much as several other Floyd albums, but I've listened to this album enough that I don't feel like I need notes. Um, and I will say, my opinion on this album has certainly changed. Especially since I've listened to an album every day for 9 months, you start to get senses of production of these of stuff, And I will say, the production on this version of the album, which is the 2011 mix, which is there's basically no difference between that and 77. Um, the keys and the drums do not really stand out that great, I will say. It's very guitar and bass heavy. Like, it's very, it it very heavily favors the two frontmen that are Roger Waters and David Gilmour. Now, something what may have something to do with that is this is the first and only Floyd album to be recorded and produced entirely at Britannia Row Studios. Every previous album was, aside from live ones, were recorded and produced at I forgot about it. Jesus Christ. Abbey Road. Why did I forget the name for a split second? It's like the most famous recording studio of all time, for fuck's sake, and I forgot the name of it. But yeah, every previous Floyd album, so that's Piper, Saucerful, Dark Side, Wish You Were Here, Even Ummagumma. Everything was recorded and produced at Abbey Road, because the Floyd had a deal with EMI, because EMI owns that studio, where they basically got free recording time, and then EMI gets a cut of the profit of the records. Alright, well, by 77, their contract on that ran out, so they would have had to go back to paying for studio time, and they didn't really feel like doing that, so they built Britannia Row Studio, because, it was the 70s, and they were Pink Floyd, and they were the biggest band in the world, so they had the money to do that. So that's what happened there. And then there's another thing where there was the musical climate of the time in Britain not super fond of prog rock anymore. This was the beginning of the punk movement, which I have opinions on. But, that's a story for another day. If I ever feel the need to, make a video about that, probably not. But it's, it's alright. It's, this album is alright. This is where you do start to see the beginnings of Roger Waters being a little bit too untethered, being a little bit too unleashed. You can certainly feel that in a lot of the lyrics, but unlike how it is when he goes solo, these lyrics have aged better than most of his other work outside of the Floyd, and we will get there when we get there. But the album they made after this one is fucking fantastic. So you will hear quite a lot of praise to Roger in the next video, but we're not there yet. So yeah. Animals. First song. Well, the political climate, there was, a big uprising, great amount of political unrest. This was the beginning of Margaret Thatcher being a prominent figure in English politics. I don't know. It's 50 years ago in a country that I don't live in, and thus really don't have a say in, and thus do not have a say with my vote. And also, I don't really care, because England's problems are not my problems. But yeah, so this is the first of the outwardly, very political Floyd albums. But again, these lyrics are written in a way where you can. There's a number of different ways to interpret them. I was gonna say like the Bible. No, but basically, if you're left wing, right wing, somewhere in the middle, there's a way you can interpret this as to where it comes out on your side, right? That's not the case for a lot of Roger's later stuff. But track 1, Pigs on the Wing, which is Pigs on the Wing Part 1. It's like a minute and a half. It is the first outright Pink Floyd love song. It's what Roger wrote about his then wife. That's yeah. What his second of what? What's he on now? His fifth? Yeah. If you can't tell, I have problems with Roger, but we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, Pigs on the Wing Part 1. It's the first outright Pink Floyd love song. It's okay. It's there. And track 2 is Dogs. And if you remember from the Wembley Live in 1974, this is the evolution of, or the ultimate final form of a song they had called You Gotta Be Crazy, which they performed up until they went into the studio to record Wish You Were Here. So there's, various different recordings you can find of it, and it's been evolved, but, the lyrics didn't change until they started recording Animals. And in fact, most of Dogs was recorded before Roger decided, like, the instrumental track was, like, already done. It's ready to go. But then Roger came up with the concept of fuck politicians, fuck businessmen, and, basically fuck society. This is the Floyd album where the origin of we live in a society, 20-minute guitar solo begins. This is where that originates from, for understandable reasons, because that's kind of what this album is. And there's aspects of it in, Dark Side of the Moon as well, but not as blatant. But yeah, this one's bitching about businessmen, and lyrically this does still very much feel like they're stuck in the Wish You Were Here concept of fuck the record industry. That's kind of what this feels like, because they wrote it at that time. They wrote it initially at that time. Some lyrics are the same from the version they performed live up until they went in and did it for the studio. Some are very, very different. And I actually did a high school project on, songs with political messages, and this was one of the 2 songs I chose. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play all 17 minutes of it to the class. I wish I could have done that, but that was I told a story about that on my podcast, which is called Dorkies, which is where you can go if you want to hear me talk about stuff other than music. I will link that in the description below. Look at me plugging stuff before the outro. But yeah, so that's David Gilmour absolutely shines on Dogs, both vocally and as a musician. He just fucking rips so many awesome guitar solos. It sounds really it sounds really cool. It sounds way cool. Yeah, Roger sounds alright. Again, this is sort of the start. This is the only studio album before the final cut where you start hearing Roger's shortcomings as a vocalist. This is because I feel like the way he sings in the studio here is much closer to how he sang live at the time. There's again, because he kind of sang in a higher register before this point, but that's a different thing, and we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. But yeah, so Dogs is pretty cool. Rick kind of has a couple of musical moments where he shines on it as well. Famously, he had a lot of shit going on. Like, he was getting divorced from his first wife. He had a bit of a coke problem. So again, and basically he was depressed and didn't know it, and that culminates in a whole other issue that I'll talk about in the next video. So yeah, Dogs is pretty cool. Dogs is the best song on the album. 17 minutes long. It's fucking great. Pigs, 3 different ones. This is the second best song on the album. This is the opener of side 2. And this is, after the halfway point of Dogs, it is Roger from here on out on the vocals. It begins with pig noises. Rick plays, and then Rick starts playing this, organ intro that's really cool. And you've got Dave on a fretless bass, and I believe it is Roger doing rhythm guitar on this one. If you've listened to the album, the bam stuff. So, at least for a portion of this song, it is Roger on guitar and Dave on bass. So, there's, positions changing up in this band already. There's, a whole lot of turmoil coming down the pike here. But we'll get there when we get there. Next episode. But, we're into this one, actually. Close to the end of this one. But this is talking about, 3 different politicians. I believe the only one... I forgot her name. Margaret Thatcher is named Maggie, you're merely a treat. And then there's the line, hey, you White House, which is not a reference to, at the time, the president would have been Gerald Ford. That's not a reference to American politics. That's a reference to some politician, some woman politician who had a last name of Winehouse, or not Winehouse, White House. I know it was a woman. I forgot her first name. I don't really care. This is politics from 1977, which again, it's relevant to the video, not relevant to the current day. So I'm not gonna go too in depth in it, because this is a music channel, not a political channel. So this is basically, again, Roger bitching and moaning about things. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, this is Roger bitching and moaning about politicians, which is it's a through line. We'll get there. Yeah, this song is 11 minutes long. It is the first Pink Floyd song to contain a talk box, in a prominent fashion, and it's cool. There's a bunch of pig noises and shit in there as well. Some people have problems with that. I know my mom doesn't like this album because of the animal noises, which is a ridiculous reason to not like this album. So that's that. There's a bunch of animal noises through it, corresponding to the titles of the album. So yeah, it's cool. Dave fucking rips an excellent guitar solo, which kind of, there's a Yes song. It's Machine Messiah off of Drama. I don't know if I'm gonna do a Yes completion project. That'll take a long fucking time. But I'm kind of on a deadline for this completion project because I want to get it done before I see David Gilmour in November. And it's, getting into the second half of September now, so I got not a lot of time to get everything done. So there's, again, Dave fucking rips an excellent guitar solo, and it's, it's a fucking David Gilmour guitar solo, and it's a cool Pink Floyd song, again, second best on the album. And then we get to song number 4, which is Sheep, which is the one I have the least to say about. Basically, it's just hey, people, wake up, there's some bullshit going on. If you don't act now, you're gonna get fucked. That's basically the concept of the song. The musician, there's cool musical moments on it, but not nearly as cool as other parts on the album, or in fact, most of the Floyd's catalog after metal. So it's again, it's alright. Don't have much to say about it. It's the shortest of the three big. It's the shortest of the three songs. It's got sheep noises, brick shines on it a little bit. That's what I got. You can tell I'm a little bit. I have a bit of disappointment with this album. And then you've got Pigs on the Wing Part 2, which should have been strapped to Pigs on the Wing Part 1, but I understand why they did it for thematic purposes. It's kind of the flip side of Wish You Were Here, where, Wish You Were Here, you have one long song, which is broken up in the middle by three shorter songs. This one you have one short song, which is broken up by three long songs. So, and there's some imbecile on a motorbike being fucking annoying. You probably couldn't hear. You probably wouldn't even be aware of it if I hadn't said something. Yeah, you've got Pigs on the Wing Part 2. It's okay. Alright. So, it's there. If, again, this is something that I recommend you stream first, right? And this is one of the few Floyd albums that isn't molested by streaming it on Spotify, and you can find full uploads of it on YouTube. So, would you stop making stupid fucking noises on your fucking dirt bike? Fuck you. So that's, again, something I recommend you stream first. Now, I will talk about the tour for this album, because that lays the groundwork for the next video. But first I'm going to talk about the cover here. Now, this album cover was not done by Hypnosis. The design wasn't done by Hypnosis. But the picture was taken by Hypnosis. So basically, Roger wanted a picture of the Battersea Power Station. And he wanted to float a pig above it because, businessmen, industry. Okay. Ties into the themes of the album. And initially, Hypnosis was just like, oh, well, let's just take a picture of Battersea Power Station and superimpose a pig on top of it. But Roger was like, nah, we're doing this shit for real. So they built a big inflatable pig, hire a marksman, and it won't. But the picture they took that day was unsatisfactory. So everybody goes home. They come back to do the thing again, and I think they do get a picture, but again, it's not what they want. And then also the pig flies away, causes a whole air traffic control thing, and they forgot to rehire the marksman to shoot it down if it blew away. So basically, Hypnosis took the better picture of the pig and imposed it over the better picture of Battersea Power Station, which is what they wanted to do to begin with. So it was a whole lot of effort for a whole lot of bullshit, just for Hypnosis to do what they wanted to do to begin with. But at least the light on the pig works for all the bigger it is on the album cover. So there's that. Now, this album was released in February of '77, and then the Floyd, basically the day of or the day after it came out, the Floyd embarked on the In the Flesh tour. Keep the title of that tour in mind; it's going to come up just a couple times in the next few videos, just a couple times. Actually, no, we'll get. We got solo albums to look at after this. I've just remembered. So we'll get there when we get there. The Floyd go on the In the Flesh tour, and this is where they and the band preferred smaller venues, but they were so but then the stage show was so extravagant. Their stage shows were so extravagant that basically only sports stadiums could handle them, and big arenas and shit. So you have 50,000 people in a venue shouting and screaming, going woo! Yeah, and there's particularly the American audience. The Floyd kind of had problems with So yeah, no, they had. This is where you get stories of the big inflatables and the projections on all their screens, and shit being ridiculous, but also being awesome. If you're watching this video and you went on this tour, please tell me your story. I need to know what it was like, cause there's no footage of it. Yeah, where you could work anything out at least. But yeah, no. So there, like the Roger in particular was becoming increasingly irritated with the audiences because like they don't employ an opening act. It took a lot longer to fill these venues, so everybody's drinking to entertain themselves, and they just want to hear Dark Side of the Moon, basically. Um, and they'd be getting heckled like play money, yeah. But everything comes to a head on the last evening of the tour in Montreal, where there's people launching firecrackers, and then somebody came up close, like threw a beer bottle on the stage and came up close to him, and Roger just waves at him and just fucking spits at him. Apparently didn't hit him. But they're, like, again, a whole shenanigan. And on this tour, they played both Animals and Wish You Were Here in their entirety, because they hadn't, like, and part of the problem might have been this was also their first tour since before Wish You Were Here was released. So, that could have been a contributing factor, I will say. So they would play, Animals somewhat out of order, intermission. Then they would play Wish You Were Here. Shit. They would play Animals in a different order. Then there'd be an intermission. Then they'd play Wish You Were Here in order. And then their encore would consist of Us and Them and Money. And on one date of the tour, they played Careful With That Axe, Eugene. The last time it was ever performed live. And I forget what date that was. But I will find it and link it in the description for you. So that's a whole freaking shenanigan. And it left Roger wanting to do something very particular for a stage show. But we'll get there when we get there, because the next two episodes we are looking at both David Gilmour and Richard Wright's debut solo albums. Already mentioned my podcast. If you want to listen, if you want to hear me talk about stuff other than music, if you want to continue along this musical journey with me, please feel free to subscribe. If you like this video, leave a like on it. If you've got something to contribute to the conversation, leave it in the comments below, or don't. I don't care. If you want to continue along this musical journey with me, feel free to subscribe. And if you want to hear what I'm listening to that day, or a 15-second segment at least, you can follow me on Instagram at Sean_Heaster1979. And with that, I will see you all in the next video, which will be David Gilmour's self-titled debut solo album. Bye-bye.